Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in our series, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Great Expectations. Biddy was much against his going with us, and said to me in a whisper, "Don't let him come. I don't like him." As I did not like him either, I took the liberty of saying that. We thanked him, but we didn't want seeing home. He received that piece of information with a yell of laughter, and dropped back, but came slouching after us at a little distance, curious to know whether Biddy suspected him of having had a hand in that murderous attack, of which my sister had never been able to give any account. I asked her why she did not like him. "Oh," she replied, glancing over her shoulder as she slouched after us, "because I'm afraid he likes me." "Did he ever tell you he liked you?" I asked indignantly. "No," said Biddy, glancing over her shoulder again. "He never told me so, but he dances at me whenever he can catch my eye." However novel and peculiar this testimony of attachment, I did not doubt the accuracy of the interpretation. I was very hot indeed upon old Orlick's daring to admire her, as hot as if it were an outrage on myself. "But it makes no difference to you, you know," said Biddy calmly. "No, Biddy, it makes no difference to me, only I don't like it, I don't approve of it." "Nor I neither," said Biddy, "though that makes no difference to you." "Exactly," said I. "But I must tell you, I should have no opinion of you, Biddy, if he danced with you at you with your own consent." I kept an eye on Ulrich after that night, and whenever circumstances were favorable to his dancing at Biddy got before him, to obscure that demonstration. He had struck root in Joe's establishment by reason of my sister's sudden fancy for him, or I should have tried to get him dismissed. He quite understood and reciprocated my good intentions, as I had reason to know thereafter. And now, because my mind was not confused enough before, I complicated its confusion 50,000-fold by having states and seasons when I was clear that Biddy was immeasurably better than Estella, that the plain, honest working life to which I was born had nothing in respect to be ashamed of, but offered me sufficient means of self-respect and happiness. At those times I would decide conclusively that my dissatisfaction to dear old Joe and the forge was gone, and that I was growing up in a fair way to be partners with Joe and to keep company with Biddy, when all in a moment some confounding remembrance of the Havisham days would fall upon me, like a destructive missile, and scatter my wits again. Scattered wits take a long time picking up, and often, before I had got them well together, they would be dispersed in all directions by one stray thought, that perhaps, after all, Miss Havisham was going to make my fortune, when my time was out. If my time had run out, it would still have left me still at the height of my perplexities. I dare say it never did run out, however, but was brought to a premature end as I proceed to relate. Chapter 18. It was in the 4th year of my apprenticeship to Joe, and it was a Saturday night. There was a group assembled round the fire at the Three Jolly Bargemen, attentive to Mr. Wopsle as he read the newspaper aloud. Of that group I was one. A highly popular murder had been committed, and Mr. Wopsle was imbrued in blood to the eyebrows. He gloated over every abhorrent objective in the description, and identified himself with every witness at the inquest. He faintly moaned, "I'm done for," as the victim, and he barbarously bellowed, "I'll serve you out," as the murderer. He gave the medical testimony in pointed imitation of our local practitioner, and he piped and shook as the aged turnpike keeper who had heard blows, to an extent so very paralytic as to suggest a doubt regarding the mental competency of that witness. The coroner, in Mr. Wopsle's hands, became Timon of Athens, the beadle, Coriolanus. He enjoyed himself thoroughly, and we all enjoyed ourselves and were delightfully comfortable. In this cozy state of mind, we came to the verdict, willful murder. Then, and not sooner, I became aware of a strange gentleman, leaning over the back of the settle opposite me, looking on. There was an expression of contempt on his face, and he bit the side of a great forefinger as he watched the group of faces. "Well," said the stranger to Mr. Wopsle, when the reading was done, "you have settled it all to your own satisfaction, I have no doubt." Everybody started and looked up, as if it were a murderer. He looked at everybody coldly and sarcastically. "Guilty, of course," said he. "Out with it. Come!" "Sir," returned Mr. Wopsle, "without having the honor of your acquaintance, I do say guilty." Upon this, we all took courage to unite in a confirmatory murmur. "I know you do," said the stranger. "I knew you would. I told you so. But now I'll ask you a question. Do you know, or do you not know, that the law of England supposes every man to be innocent until he is proved to be guilty?" "Sir," Mr. Wopsle began to reply, "as an Englishman myself, I—" "Come," said the stranger, biting his forefinger at him, "don't evade the question. Either you know it, or you don't know it. Which is it to be?" He stood with his head on one side and himself on one side, in a bullying, interrogative manner, and he threw his forefinger at Mr. Wopsle, as it were to mark him out before biting it again. "Now," said he, "do you know it, or don't you know it?" "Certainly I know it," replied Mr. Wopsle. "Certainly you know it." "Then why didn't you say so at first? Now I'll ask you another question," taking possession of Mr. Wopsle as if he had a right to him. "Do you know that none of these witnesses have yet been cross-examined?" Mr. Wopsle was beginning. "I can only say—" when the stranger stopped him. "What? You won't answer the question, yes or no? Now, I'll try you again," throwing his finger at him again. "Attend to me. Are you aware, or are you not aware, that none of these witnesses have yet been cross-examined? Come, I only want one word from you, yes or no." Mr. Wopsle hesitated, and we all began to conceive a rather poor opinion of him. "Come," said the stranger, "I'll help you. You don't deserve help, but I'll help you. Look at that paper you hold in your hand. What is it?" "What is it?" repeated Mr. Wopsle, eyeing it, much at a loss. "Is it," pursued the stranger in his most sarcastic and suspicious manner, "the printed paper you have just been reading from?" "Undoubtedly. Undoubtedly. Now turn to that paper, and tell me whether it distinctly states that the prisoner expressly said that his legal advisers instructed him altogether to reserve his defense." "I read that just now," Mr. Wopsle pleaded. "Never mind what you read just now, sir. I don't ask you what you read just now. You may read the Lord's Prayer backwards if you like, and perhaps have done it before today. Turn to the paper. No, 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 my friend, not to the top of the column. You know better than that. To the bottom. To the bottom." We all began to think Mr. Wopsle full of subterfuge. "Well, have you found it?" "Here it is," said Mr. Wopsle. "Now, follow that passage with your eye, and tell me whether it distinctly states that the prisoner expressly said that he was instructed by his legal advisers wholly to reserve his defense. Come, do you make that of it?" Mr. Wopsle answered. "Those are not the exact words, not the exact words," repeated the gentleman bitterly. "Is that the exact substance?" "Yes," said Mr. Wopsle. "Yes," repeated the stranger, looking round at the rest of the company with his hand extended towards the witness, Wopsle. "And now I ask you, what you say to the conscience of that man, with that passage before his eyes, can lay his head upon his pillow, after having pronounced a fellow creature guilty, unheard?" We all began to suspect that Mr. Wopsle was not the man we had thought him, and that he was beginning to be found out. "And that same man, remember," pursued the gentleman, throwing his finger at Mr. Wopsle heavily, "that same man might be summoned as a juryman upon this very trial, and, having thus deeply committed himself, might return to the bosom of his family, and lay his head upon his pillow, after deliberately swearing that he would well and truly try the issue joined between our sovereign lord the king and the prisoner at the bar, and would a true verdict give according to the evidence, so help him God." we'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care. And thanks again.